Barren wife abandoned in dilapidated apartment, adopts an abandoned child. Years later, this happened. Her husband spat the word useless like venom, mocking her barrenness before walking away and abandoning her in a crumbling apartment that reeked of failure. The peeling walls, broken windows and leaking roof became her prison, a daily reminder that she was unwanted, unloved, and left behind. Yet, in the middle of her shame, she found an abandoned child, thrown away just as she had been. She claimed it, raised it, and poured into it all the love the world had denied her. Years later, when the world least expected it, that very child became the reason her name could no longer be mocked in whispers. This is the story of a woman the world tried to bury in humiliation, but whose greatest rejection became her greatest redemption. Hello family, welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request, please, subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together, we are not just telling stories. We are keeping hope alive. Clara Williams sat in the bright white office, her hands clenched together on her lap. The smell of disinfectant was sharp in the air, and the sound of the ticking clock above her seemed louder than usual. She had been waiting for this day, this appointment, for weeks. Her heart raced as the door opened and Dr. Alan Brooks stepped inside. His face was calm, too calm. Clara searched his eyes, desperate for hope. "Well?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Did it work? Am I?" The doctor hesitated. His throat tightened. He knew the truth. The embryo had taken. The procedure had succeeded. Right now, inside a hidden room, life was growing because of her. But he also knew the man standing outside his office, Richard Williams, Clara's husband, had already made his wishes clear. Dr. Brooks forced himself to look at her. "I'm sorry, Clara," he said slowly. "The IVF failed." The words crashed down on her like stones. Her vision blurred. "Failed," she whispered again, almost choking. "No, that can't be. I prayed. I believed." Richard's hand fell on her shoulder, but his touch was cold, not comforting. He gave the doctor a quick nod, sealing the lie. Then he looked at Clara with pity that felt more like disgust. "You did your best," Richard said flatly. "But maybe it's time we accept the truth. Some things aren't meant to be." Clara's chest tightened. "No, Richard. I can try again. Please, one more chance." Richard stepped back, his eyes narrowing. "You think money grows on trees? How many times do you expect me to waste resources on this failure?" The doctor's face tightened with guilt, but he said nothing. Clara didn't notice. She was too busy trying to swallow the lump in her throat. At home that evening, Clara cooked dinner as if nothing had happened. She placed the plates on the table, her hands shaking. She needed Richard's love now more than ever, but Richard sat with his phone in his hand, smiling at a message that wasn't from her. When he finally looked up, his words cut deeper than any knife. "Clara," he said, "Melissa is pregnant." The name hit her like lightning. Melissa, the young secretary she had seen hovering around him at the office, the secretary who laughed too loud at his jokes. Clara's lips parted, but no words came. Richard leaned back, folding his arms. "She's giving me what you couldn't. A family, a future." Tears filled Clara's eyes. "Richard, after everything I've done for you, after standing by you, when you had nothing, you're leaving me for her?" Before she could say more, Agatha's voice echoed from the doorway. Richard's mother had let herself in, as she often did. Her eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction. "I warned you, Richard," Agatha said smoothly. "A barren woman has no place in our family. Melissa is young, healthy, fertile. She will give you heirs. Clara, she's just dead weight. Agatha, please. Clara begged, her voice breaking. Don't do this to me. Agatha's lip curled. Don't blame us, Clara. Blame yourself. You've failed as a wife. Richard's chair scraped the floor as he stood. He grabbed Clara's wrist so hard she winced. Pack your things. You're leaving tonight. The rain was pouring when Richard shoved Clara's suitcase into the back of a cab. He didn't even look at her as he slammed the door shut. The cab dropped her in front of a crumbling, mold-infested apartment on the edge of town. The walls were cracked, the ceiling leaked, and the smell of mildew clawed at her nose. This is where you'll stay, Richard said coldly, dragging her inside. His eyes were sharp, his jaw tight. Don't expect a penny more from me. Melissa gives me what you never could. Clara's body shook. Richard, please. Enough, he snapped. He spat the words like venom. You're an empty shell, Clara. Nothing more. With that, he turned and walked out, his footsteps fading into the storm. Clara sat on the floor for hours, staring at the peeling paint, the leaking roof. Every drop of water from the ceiling echoed her loneliness. Her dreams of being a mother were gone. Her marriage, gone. Her dignity, shattered. She pulled her knees to her chest and whispered into the silence. Why me? What did I do to deserve this? But the night gave no answer. Only the storm raged outside as if the sky itself mocked her pain. Then, she heard it, a faint cry. At first, Clara thought it was her imagination, the wind playing tricks on her. But the sound grew louder, a baby's cry. Her heart pounded. She stumbled to her feet and rushed to the door. The rain slapped her face as she stepped outside. There, by the broken steps of the building, lay a bundle wrapped in soaked rags. The cries pierced the night, fragile and desperate. Clara gasped. She dropped to her knees, her hands trembling as she unwrapped the bundle. A baby, tiny, shivering, abandoned like trash. Clara's tears fell onto the baby's face as she pulled him close, shielding him from the rain. Oh, sweetheart, who could do this to you? The baby's cries softened, as if sensing her warmth. Clara pressed her cheek to his tiny head, her heart swelling with a love she thought she'd never feel. They threw you away, she whispered through her tears. Just like they threw me away. Her voice broke, but her grip tightened. But we will survive. I swear it. I will raise you, protect you, love you. You are mine now. She carried the baby inside, closing the door against the storm. Neither she nor the world knew the truth. This was no ordinary child. This was her child. Her stolen miracle returned to her arms in the most unlikely way. The storm raged long into the night, but inside the moldy apartment, Clara held the baby close. She had wrapped him in her only blanket, rocking him gently, whispering broken promises into the darkness. Her tears had dried on her cheeks, leaving her face tight and raw. But every time the baby stirred, a strange warmth rose inside her. It was a feeling she hadn't known in years, a fragile spark of hope. She studied his tiny face. His cheeks were pink from the cold, his fists curled as if ready to fight the world. You're strong, she murmured, kissing his forehead. Stronger than me. The baby sighed, settling against her chest. Clara's arms tightened around him. A thought crossed her mind. Maybe she wasn't barren after all. Maybe God had placed this child in her path for a reason. But then doubt struck. What if someone came looking for him? What if he was taken away from her? She shook the thought away, clutching him tighter. No, no one will take you from me. You're mine now. Mine hours passed. The apartment was damp, cold, and falling apart, but Clara no longer noticed. She stayed awake, watching over the child, afraid that if she blinked too long, he would vanish like a dream. In the quiet moments, Richard's cruel words echoed in her mind. You're an empty shell, Clara. Nothing more. She pressed the baby closer, whispering fiercely into the silence. He was wrong. He doesn't know what love is, but I do, and I will prove it. Her voice cracked, but her resolve grew stronger. Meanwhile, across town, Dr. Alan Brooks sat alone in his office. The rain tapped against the windows, each drop a reminder of his guilt. His desk lamp cast long shadows across the scattered files. On top of the pile lay Clara's chart. Her name stared back at him, accusing. Beside it was the infant's medical record, the baby he had delivered in secret. He buried his face in his hands. "What have I done?" he whispered. He remembered Clara's hopeful eyes when she had asked if the procedure worked. He remembered lying to her, stealing her joy. And then Richard's voice, cold and commanding. "Get rid of it. I don't care how. Just make sure she never finds out Dr. Brooks had promised to obey." But when the tiny life came into the world, he couldn't go through with Richard's order. He couldn't take innocent breath away. So he had done the only thing he could think of. Left the child where someone might find him. But the image of that baby in the rain haunted him. What if no one had heard? What if the child had died before morning? His chest tightened at the thought. He told himself over and over, at least he has a chance. At least he wasn't destroyed. Still, the truth gnawed at him. If Clara ever learned what he had done, what Richard had ordered, her heart would break all over again. Back in the apartment, the storm finally eased. The first light of dawn slipped through the broken window. Clara had not slept. Her back ached, her eyes burned, but she didn't care. She looked down at the child, sleeping soundly now, his tiny chest rising and falling against her. For the first time in years, her lips curved into a faint smile. "Liam," she whispered suddenly, tasting the name on her tongue. "Yes, Liam. That will be your name." The sound of it filled the room, soft but firm. It was the first thing she had given him. A name, a place in the world. "You're not garbage," she said softly. "You're not a mistake. You are my son, and I will raise you, even if the world spits on us both." Her voice grew stronger. "They threw me away. They threw you away. But together we'll rise outside." The streets began to stir with life. Vendors shouted, cars honked. The storm had passed, but Clara knew storms would come again. She was penniless, abandoned, mocked as barren. Now she had a child to raise alone in a place where even she barely survived. Fear tugged at her. But then she looked at Liam. He shifted in her arms, his tiny fingers curling around hers. And in that small, fragile grip, Clara found something she thought she had lost forever. Purpose. She kissed his hand and whispered, almost to herself, "This is not the end. It's the beginning." In another part of the city, Richard was raising a toast with Melissa and Agatha. They laughed over expensive wine, celebrating Melissa's pregnancy, mocking Clara as if she were a forgotten joke. Agatha sneered, "By now she's probably crying into those broken walls." Good riddance. She was never fit to carry our name. Richard smirked. "She'll fade into nothing, just like she deserves. Melissa is my future now." But even as he said it, the storm outside rattled the windows, a warning neither of them understood. For the child they had thrown away had not died. He had found the very arms meant for him. And one day, the truth would return, not as a whisper, but as a roar. That morning, Clara stepped to the cracked window of her apartment. She held Liam up, showing him the pale sunrise. Her voice was steady now, almost defiant. "Look at the light, Liam," she said. "We survived the night, and we'll survive all the others too. As long as I breathe, you will never be alone again." She closed her eyes, her face set in quiet determination. Neither she nor the world knew it yet. But the child in her arms was not just her salvation. He was her blood, her stolen miracle, her redemption. And when the truth finally came to light, the ones who cast her aside would learn that the woman they called barren was never truly empty. She had been chosen. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give future to children and women abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing to hitting the subscribe button and turning on your notification bell. Also let us know in the comments where you are watching us from and how this story hit home for you. 10 years passed like a cruel blur. Clara Williams was no longer the timid woman who once trembled under Richard's shadow. Life had hardened her, but it had not broken her. Every wrinkle on her face, every callus on her hands, told the story of sacrifice. The mouldy apartment still leaked when it rained, and the walls still carried stains of age and neglect. But inside, Clara made it a home. She scrubbed, patched and cleaned until the place carried warmth, not shame. At the center of that warmth was Liam. He was 10 years old now, tall for his age, with sharp eyes that seemed older than his years. He absorbed knowledge like a sponge, solving puzzles and reading books far above his grade. Teachers often shook their heads in wonder. This boy isn't ordinary. But for Clara, he was more than brilliant. He was her joy, her reason to rise every morning. She worked menial jobs, cleaning houses, washing dishes, even carrying bricks at construction sites. Her back ached, her skin burned from harsh chemicals, but she endured. Every penny went to feed, clothe, and educate Liam. Still, the world refused to forget her past. Neighbors gossiped openly when she walked by. Women whispered at the market, "That barren woman stole someone's child." She parades him as if he's hers. Children mocked Liam. "Your mother picked you out of the trash." Clara ignored them. Or at least she tried. At night she sometimes cried quietly, careful not to wake Liam. But every time he hugged her and whispered, "Don't cry, Mama. You're the best mama in the world." The pain melted. She kissed his forehead and whispered back, "They don't know what they're saying. You are mine, Liam. Always mine." Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Richard's life had changed. He had married Melissa soon after discarding Clara. Together they flaunted their wealth, driving new cars, hosting parties, appearing in magazines. To outsiders, they were a perfect couple. But behind the glitter, bitterness grew. Melissa, who once boasted about carrying Richard's child, faced a cruel twist. After giving birth to their daughter, she fell gravely ill. The doctors treated her, but the damage was permanent. "You won't conceive again," the specialist told her bluntly. "Your womb is too damaged." Melissa's face had drained of color. Richard's jaw had tightened in disgust. Agatha, ever poisonous, whispered in Richard's ear, "First Clara gave you nothing. Now Melissa gives you only one child. Is this your destiny? To be surrounded by barren women?" The words festered in Melissa's heart. Though she dressed in silk and diamonds, she felt naked before Agatha's disdain. She became bitter, paranoid, and increasingly jealous of anything that reminded her of Clara. But the world had not buried Clara as Richard and Agatha had hoped. Liam's name began to appear in small competitions, essay contests, math challenges, science fairs. Teachers praised his discipline and brilliance. Slowly, people noticed. Slowly, whispers changed. "Isn't that Clara's boy? He's remarkable." Melissa noticed too. Each time she read about Liam's victories, her hands clenched with rage. The boy she had once left behind, the boy who lived with the woman she despised, was rising. She would stand before her mirror, staring at her reflection, spitting words only she could hear. "That boy should have been mine to claim, not hers, never hers." Far away, Dr. Alan Brooks struggled with his own war. 10 years had passed since the night he abandoned the newborn. 10 years of guilt that rotted his soul. His hair had thinned, his back bent, and his lungs weakened with disease. He often sat alone in his study, coughing into a blood-stained cloth, his trembling hands clutching a leather folder. Inside were documents, hospital records, IVF results, signatures, proof. Proof that Liam was Clara's biological son. Sometimes he opened the folder and stared at the papers, whispering, "One day, before I die, the truth must be told. She deserves to know." But fear still held him. Richard was powerful, ruthless. To expose him meant risk. Still, Dr. Brooks's time was running out, and he swore on his fading breath, "I will not leave this world without setting things right." Back in the old apartment, Clara prepared dinner after a long day of work. Liam sat at the table, bent over his homework. "Mama," he said without looking up, "why do people say I don't belong to you?" Clara froze. The knife slipped from her hand, clattering against the board. Slowly, she turned to face him. "Who said that?" she asked softly. "Some boys at school. They said you picked me up from the garbage. They said I'm not really your son." His voice was steady, but his eyes glistened. Clara's heart broke. She walked over, knelt beside him, and cupped his face in her hands. "Listen to me, Liam. You are mine. I don't care what they say. You are my son. Blood doesn't make a family. Love does, and I love you more than life itself." Liam's lips trembled, then curved into a faint smile. He hugged her tightly. "I know, Mama. I just wanted to hear you say it." Clara kissed his cheek, fighting back her own tears. "Never doubt it, Liam. Never." That night, as Liam slept, Clara stood by the window staring at the stars. She whispered a prayer only heaven could hear. "God, give me strength to raise him. Make him strong where I am weak. And when the world laughs at us, let them one day bow their heads in shame." The wind rustled the curtains as if answering her prayer. And though she didn't know it yet, the world was already shifting, preparing for a storm that would shake every truth she thought she knew. The sun glared down on the schoolyard as Liam stood proudly holding his latest trophy. Another local competition. Another victory. His teacher patted his back, beaming. "Your mother must be so proud." "She is," Liam said with a shy smile. "Everything I do is for her." Clara stood at the edge of the crowd, her worn dress out of place among polished shoes and pressed suits, yet her smile was brighter than any jewel. She clapped, her eyes shining with tears. For all the pain, for all the mockery, this moment was worth everything. But not everyone in the crowd was smiling. Melissa watched from the shadows, her jaw tight. She wore pearls around her neck, a designer dress, and shoes that sparkled, but none of it hid the bitterness twisting her face. Each cheer for Liam felt like a knife. Each compliment, a reminder of what she could never have again. Agatha stood beside her, frowning. Why is that boy everywhere these days? He wins every little contest. People are whispering his name as if he matters. Melissa's lips curled. He doesn't matter. He's nothing, just a stray picked up by that pathetic Clara. But inside, Melissa burned. That boy did matter. He was the thorn in her side, the reminder that Clara, discarded, mocked Clara, still had something she did not, a son who shone like gold. Later that evening, Clara and Liam walked home together. Liam clutched his trophy, talking excitedly about his plans for the next competition. Clara smiled, nodding, though her heart trembled with gratitude. Every win was proof that her sacrifices were not in vain. Every step he took forward was a step away from the shame Richard and Agatha had buried her in. As they approached the apartment, Clara's smile faded. A sleek black car was parked near the entrance, and leaning against it, arms crossed, stood Melissa. Clara's heart sank, but she straightened her back. She would not show fear. "Go inside, Liam," she said calmly. "I'll be right there." Liam hesitated. "Mama." "Now, Liam." He obeyed, though his eyes lingered on Melissa with quiet suspicion. Melissa stepped forward, her heels clicking against the pavement. Her perfume filled the air, sharp and overpowering. "Well, well," she sneered. "Clara Williams." Or should I say, Clara the beggar? Clara's eyes narrowed. "What do you want, Melissa?" Melissa's gaze drifted to the window where Liam's shadow moved behind the curtain. Her lips curled into a smirk. "That boy." Clara's fists clenched. "Stay away from him." Melissa tilted her head, feigning innocence. "You really think he belongs to you? Everyone knows he doesn't. You picked him off the street like a piece of trash. He isn't yours, Clara." "He never was." Clara's chest rose and fell, but her voice was steady. "He is mine. I raised him. I bled for him. I gave him my life. That makes him mine in every way that matters." Melissa's smile turned venomous. "Don't be so sure. Boys like him grow up. They ask questions. They want answers. One day, I'll give him those answers. And when he learns he's not really yours, he'll hate you for lying to him. He'll leave you. And then—" She leaned closer, her voice a hiss. "I'll take him from you." For a moment, Clara's face tightened. Pain flickered in her eyes, but then it was gone, replaced by a fire Melissa had never seen before. Clara stepped closer until her words struck like steel. "You listen to me, Melissa," she said, her voice low and sharp. "You abandoned your womb. You left that boy to die. Don't you dare come near him again. You will not take what you once threw away." Melissa's smirk faltered. Clara's eyes blazed with a strength she hadn't expected. For the first time, Melissa stepped back. Clara leaned in, her final words cutting like a blade. "You can have your diamonds, your cars, your parties. But my son is not for sale. Not for you. Not for anyone." Melissa's face twisted with rage. "You think you've won, Clara? You think a piece of trash like you can stand against me?" Clara held her ground. "I don't need to win against you, Melissa. I already have. Because love built this home, and love is something you'll never understand." For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the hum of the city. Then Melissa spun on her heel, her heels striking the pavement like gunshots. She climbed into her sleek car and slammed the door. The engine roared as she drove away, but her parting glare was a promise. This was not the end. Inside the apartment, Liam rushed to Clara. "Mama, what did she want?" Clara smiled faintly, brushing his hair back. "Nothing, my love. Nothing that matters." But inside, her heart was pounding. She knew Melissa's words were more than empty threats. She knew storms were coming. Still, as Liam hugged her tightly, she whispered into his hair, "You are mine. Always mine." And though Melissa's envy loomed like a dark cloud, Clara's grip on her son only tightened. No matter what, she would never let him go. Far across the city, Dr. Alan Brooks sat at his desk, coughing into a bloodied handkerchief. His trembling hands opened the leather folder once again. "Soon," he whispered weakly. "Before I die, she will know. The truth must be told." He closed the folder, his breath shallow. His eyes burned with guilt, but also with resolve. The storm was building, and when it broke, it would not only shake Clara's world, it would destroy Richard's empire. Melissa's car screeched to a halt at a red light. She gripped the wheel, her knuckles white, her lips trembling with fury. "That boy isn't hers," she muttered through clenched teeth. "He will never be hers. One day, I'll make him mine again." But back in the small apartment, Clara whispered to herself as she held Liam close. "You abandoned your womb, Melissa. Don't you dare touch my son." 15 years had passed since Clara first held Liam in her arms. He was no longer the fragile baby wrapped in rags, nor the shy boy mocked by neighbors. He was now a man, and not just any man. At 25, Liam Williams had become a name spoken in boardrooms and whispered in conferences. With a sharp mind and unshakable discipline, he created innovations that transformed industries. His projects in renewable energy and technology drew investors from across the globe. Magazines called him the prodigy who builds futures. Everywhere he went, people asked the same question. Who raised you? What shaped you into this leader? And every time, Liam answered with the same unwavering smile. My mother. Clara Williams. She gave me everything. Those words spread like fire. Articles began to circulate, not just about Liam's genius, but about the mother who raised him in poverty, mocked as barren, yet gave the world a leader. For Clara, it was both joy and vindication. She had lived in the shadows for so long, carrying scars no one could see. But now, when people looked at her, they no longer saw a discarded wife. They saw the woman who raised greatness. But not everyone celebrated. In Richard Williams' mansion, silence hung heavy in the air. His company, once strong and feared, was crumbling. Mismanagement, corruption, and reckless spending had left it drowning in debt. Investors pulled out. Shares collapsed. The empire he had built on arrogance was rotting from within. Richard slammed his glass onto the table, shattering it. Why? How? Melissa sat nearby, her hands folded in her lap, her face pale but her eyes simmering with anger. Agatha, older now but no less venomous, spat her bitterness. You were careless, Richard. You should have expanded, not wasted money on your little pleasures. Richard turned on her, his eyes bloodshot. And who enjoyed those pleasures with me? Who demanded endless parties? Who bled the company dry with her vanity? His glare fell on Melissa, whose face flushed with shame and fury. Melissa snapped, Don't you dare blame me for your incompetence. I gave you a child. She stopped short, her voice catching. At least once. The silence after her words was deafening. Everyone in the room knew the truth. She had only given Richard one child, and after her illness, she could give him no more. That single daughter, Sophie, now grown, cared little for business or legacy. She was busy chasing pleasures, uninterested in the empire her father was losing. And Melissa had no heir to carry Richard's name forward. Days later, headlines shook the business world. Young innovator Liam Williams offered CEO position to save Williams Industries. The announcement spread everywhere. TV screens, newspapers, online articles. The struggling empire of Richard Williams had chosen a new face to lead its survival. A prodigy, a visionary. Liam. Richard sat frozen in his office when the news was read to him. He laughed bitterly at first. Liam Williams. Whoever he is, they think a boy can save what I built. Pathetic. But his board of directors saw no other option. Investors trusted Liam. He was the future. Without him, Williams Industries would collapse completely. He's the only chance we have, they told Richard. And so the irony began to unfold. The very company Richard had ruined was being placed in the hands of the boy he had once discarded. Melissa's fury grew like a storm. She paced the mansion halls, her nails digging into her palms. No, she hissed. This can't be. That boy, that filthy boy raised by Clara. He will not take everything. He will not stand where my daughter should have stood. Her eyes gleamed with envy. She had mocked Clara for raising a stray. She had laughed at the thought of Clara's misery. And now, that stray was about to become the most powerful young leader in the nation. Melissa's reflection in the mirror stared back at her. Barren, aging, fading. She clenched her fists, whispering to herself, If he rises, I fall. And I will not fall. Far away, Dr. Alan Brooks lay in a dimly lit bedroom, his body frail, his breaths shallow. Time was slipping from him. Each cough rattled his chest, each moment reminded him that death was near. Beside his bed was the leather folder he had guarded for 25 years. Inside were papers, signatures, test results, and a recorded confession he had made with trembling hands. He pressed the folder against his chest. "Clara," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I can't die without giving you back what was stolen." His nurse leaned over, worried. "Doctor, you should rest." But Dr. Brooks shook his head. "No rest. Not until the truth is spoken. Call Clara Williams. Tell her to come. Now." And so, as the world prepared to witness Liam rise into the seat of power once held by Richard, the stage was being set for a revelation that would shatter everything. The night was quiet when Clara received the call. The voice on the other end trembled with urgency. "Mrs. Williams?" "This is Nurse Helen. Dr. Brooks. He asked for you. He says it's important. He doesn't have much time." Clara's heart skipped. Dr. Brooks. It had been years since she had last seen him, her IVF doctor, the man who had delivered her deepest disappointment. She almost said no. Old wounds still ached, but something in the nurse's voice made her grab her coat. Within the hour, she stood outside a dimly lit house that smelled faintly of medicine and regret. Inside, Dr. Brooks lay weakly against his pillows. His once steady hands shook, his face pale and drawn. But when his eyes fell on Clara, they lit with something fierce, guilt, sorrow, and determination. "Clara!" he rasped, his voice strained. "Thank you for coming." Clara's chest tightened. She had not seen him since the day he told her the IVF had failed. Memories flooded back, his calm expression, his false words. Her voice hardened. "Why am I here, doctor?" To hear another lie. He winced, coughing violently, clutching at his chest. The nurse rushed forward, but he waved her away. His eyes locked on Clara's, desperate. "No lies," he whispered hoarsely. "Only truth. Truth I should have told you long ago." Clara frowned, confused. What truth? With trembling hands, Dr. Brooks gestured to the leather folder on the table. The nurse placed it in Clara's hands. It was heavy, filled with papers, files, and a small recorder. Her fingers shook as she opened it. The first document caught her eye, her name printed across the top. Clara Williams, IVF results. Her eyes darted across the page. The words blurred at first, but then sharpened. Procedure, successful. Embryo viable. Clara's breath hitched. "Successful," she whispered, "but you told me it failed." Dr. Brooks's lips quivered. Tears filled his eyes. "It worked, Clara. You were never barren. Your embryo grew. Your child was born." The world spun around her. Clara's knees buckled and she clutched the folder like it was life itself. "My child?" Her voice broke. "Where is my child?" The doctor's sob cracked through the silence. "I couldn't destroy him, but Richard ordered me to make him disappear. He said you were never to know, so I left him where someone might find him. It was the only way I could save him." Clara's mind reeled. Memories flashed. Rain pounding the night she first heard a baby's cry outside her door, the tiny bundle wrapped in rags, the trembling voice inside her whispering, "They threw you away, just like they threw me away." Her heart stopped. The truth crashed down in a tidal wave. Liam, her miracle, her flesh, her son. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched the papers, her sobs shaking her. All these years, he was mine. My son was mine. Dr. Brooks reached out with a frail hand. "Forgive me, Clara. I stole your joy, but I couldn't let Richard erase your child. You must tell him. Tell Liam who he is. You deserve that truth." Clara took his hand, her tears falling on his skin. "You should have told me long ago. But you saved him. For that, I will forgive you." Dr. Brooks closed his eyes, relief softening his face. "Thank you," he whispered. His final breath rattled in his chest. And then he was gone. The nurse wept quietly in the corner, but Clara could not move. She sat frozen, the folder clutched to her chest, her tears unstoppable. Meanwhile, in the mansion, Melissa stormed into Richard's study. Her face was pale, her eyes blazing. "Do you realize who they've chosen to run this company?" Richard looked up from his glass, exhausted. "A boy. A prodigy. What of it?" Melissa slammed the newspaper onto his desk. "That boy is Liam Williams. Clara's boy. The one she raised. Don't you see? He will bury us." Richard laughed bitterly. "A child raised in filth. He may have investors fooled, but he will never outshine me." Melissa leaned closer, her voice sharp. "You don't understand. People love him. They honor Clara. Every word he speaks is a dagger in our chest. He is everything we're not, respected, and if he learns the truth—" Her voice trailed off, panic flashing in her eyes. Richard's smirk faltered. For the first time, unease crossed his face. That night, Clara sat by the window of her apartment, the folder open on her lap. Papers spread across the table, each line cutting her deeper and lifting her higher at once. She replayed the recording on the small device, Dr. Brooks's broken voice filling the room. Clara was never barren. The child was hers. Richard ordered me to erase him. I couldn't. Forgive me. Her hands trembled as she turned it off. She pressed the folder to her chest, her tears spilling silently. She whispered into the darkness, her voice trembling but fierce. "He stole my motherhood. But he cannot steal my victory. The truth will bury them." Her eyes burned with a fire that had been smothered for years. For the first time, Clara knew the full truth. She had raised her own son, her miracle, her redemption, and now, armed with the proof, she would no longer walk in shame. The storm had finally broken, and when the pieces fell, Richard and Melissa would be buried beneath the weight of the truth they tried so hard to hide. The night glittered with light. Crystal chandeliers swayed above the ballroom, casting golden reflections across polished marble floors. Cameras lined the hall, their flashes bursting like fireworks as the world's most powerful investors and dignitaries poured in. The gala was the grandest the city had seen in years, a celebration of renewal, of leadership, of a new era for Williams Industries. At the center of it all stood Liam Williams. He was tall, confident, and poised in his tailored suit. His name had been written across headlines for weeks. Prodigy, CEO, appointed to revive collapsing empire. Around him, men and women in expensive suits whispered his name with admiration, shaking his hand, offering him promises, begging for partnerships. Beside him, Clara stood quietly in a simple gown. Her hands were folded in front of her, but her eyes brimmed with quiet pride. She had once been discarded in ruins, mocked as barren, yet tonight she was the mother of the man the world now celebrated. Every cheer for him was a cheer for her sacrifices. Every flash of the camera was proof she had never been empty. Yet, across the hall, Richard and Melissa stood stiffly, their smiles strained. They had dressed for glory, Richard in his finest tuxedo, Melissa in diamonds that glimmered under the chandeliers. But no sparkle could hide the cracks in their facade. Their empire was already trembling, their lies already fraying, and tonight, before the world, the ground beneath them would shatter. The evening began with speeches. Investors praised Liam, calling him the hope of the future, the genius of his generation. Media cameras swiveled, capturing every word. Richard forced a smile, clapping louder than necessary, pretending pride. Melissa gripped his arm tightly, her nails digging into his sleeve, her eyes darting toward Clara across the room. Every time she saw Clara's serene face, her stomach twisted with rage. Agatha, now frail but still venomous, sat at their table, muttering under her breath. "Look at her," she hissed. "She doesn't deserve to stand here. All this belongs to us." But her words were drowned out by the thunderous applause as Liam stepped to the podium. He began with grace. His voice carried confidence and warmth, speaking not just of business but of vision, integrity, and hope. He spoke of the responsibility leaders had to build, not exploit, to protect, not discard. His words silenced the room, making even hardened investors nod in respect. Then he paused, his eyes scanning the crowd. He smiled gently, and his voice softened. Everything I am today, I owe to one person, a woman the world mocked, discarded, called barren. But she raised me with love when the world gave her nothing. She is my strength. She is my mother, Clara Williams. The spotlight shifted. Cameras turned. Gasps filled the room as Clara, dressed simply but radiating quiet dignity, was revealed to the world. The crowd erupted in applause, some rising to their feet. Reporters scribbled furiously. Flashbulbs exploded. Clara's eyes shimmered with tears as Liam extended his hand, beckoning her to join him. She walked to his side, her head held high, her son's arm steadying her. But then, a voice cut through the applause. "Ladies and gentlemen," the Master of Ceremonies announced, "we have one more matter to present tonight. At the request of the late Dr. Alan Brooks, a statement and sealed documents have been delivered to this event." The room fell silent. A suited attorney stepped forward, holding a sealed folder. Richard's body stiffened. Melissa's face drained of color. Clara's breath caught in her throat. The attorney opened the folder and began to read. His voice was clear, steady, carrying across the ballroom. "These are the words of Dr. Alan Brooks, recorded before his passing. They concern the history of Mrs. Clara Williams, Mr. Richard Williams, and the child known today as Liam Williams." The room buzzed with confusion. Cameras flashed wildly. Richard's fists clenched, his face pale with dread. The attorney pressed play on a small recorder. Dr. Brooks's frail voice filled the hall. "I confess that 25 years ago, I was ordered to deceive Clara Williams. Her IVF procedure had succeeded, the embryo was viable, but her husband, Richard Williams, instructed me to tell her it failed. He feared the truth would bind her to him. He demanded the child be erased." Gasps rippled through the room. Clara trembled, her hand clutching Liam's arm. Reporters nearly fell over each other in shock. Dr. Brooks's voice continued, shaking but firm. "I could not destroy the child. When he was born, I abandoned him where someone might find him. By God's grace, Clara herself found him and raised him, never knowing he was her own son. Liam Williams is not just the boy she saved. He is her flesh, her blood, her miracle." The room erupted in chaos, shouts, gasps, disbelief. Some people stood frozen, mouths open in shock. Others whispered furiously, cameras whirring, recording every second. Clara covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Liam turned to her, his eyes wide with emotion, and pulled her into his arms. She sobbed against his chest, the truth washing over her like fire and light. Richard's world shattered in that instant. His face twisted in horror. "No, no, this is lies, all of it!" But the attorney lifted the papers, medical records, signatures, official documents. The evidence was undeniable. The world had heard. The cameras had captured it. The truth was immortalized. The collapse began immediately. Investors rose to their feet, voices raised in anger. "You lied to the world. You betrayed your own wife. A man like you cannot be trusted." One by one they walked out, pulling their funds, withdrawing their support. Phones buzzed with breaking news alerts. Richard Williams exposed, stole wife's child, ordered cover-up. Melissa's face twisted with terror. She grabbed Richard's arm. "Do something! Stop this!" But Richard shook her off, his eyes wild. He shouted into the crowd, "I built this empire! None of you would be here without me." His words fell on deaf ears. The empire he clung to was crumbling in real time. Melissa fled the hall, her diamonds clattering as she ran, humiliated before the cameras. She had no legacy, no heirs, nothing left but disgrace. Agatha tried to follow, but the crowd jeered. Reporters shoved microphones at her, demanding answers. For the first time, the poison in her tongue failed her. She shrank under the weight of shame. At the podium, Liam held Clara's hand. His voice, steady and strong, rose above the chaos. You called her barren. You mocked her, cast her aside. But tonight, the world knows the truth. She was never barren. She was robbed, and still, she raised me with love. She is my only mother, my true mother. The hall erupted with thunderous applause. Reporters swarmed, capturing every tear on Clara's face, every word Liam spoke. The world would remember this moment, the rise of a prodigy and the vindication of a woman once discarded. Clara stood beside her son, tears glistening, her head held high. The cameras that once would have mocked her now immortalized her triumph. But amidst the applause, Richard fell. He dropped to his knees before Clara, his face twisted with desperation, his voice cracked, trembling. Clara, forgive me, please. I was wrong. I was blinded. Don't let it end like this. The room went silent. All eyes on the woman he had once spat upon, the woman he had discarded. Clara looked down at him, her face calm, her tears now dry. Her voice was steady, resolute, cutting through the silence. You called me barren, Richard. You mocked me, abandoned me, threw me into ruins, but I carried life, I raised greatness. And now, the world knows. The truth is, you are the barren one. Empty, loveless, legacy-less. Richard's body sagged. He covered his face with shaking hands as the cameras flashed. His empire gone, his pride gone, his name forever ruined. Clara turned, her arm linked with Liam's. Together, they walked out of the hall, the cameras capturing every step. She did not look back. The world erupted with headlines the next morning. From barren to beloved, Clara Williams, honored as mother of prodigy, CEO. Richard Williams ruined by his own lies. Love raised greatness. The story of Clara and Liam. Every corner of the world now knew her name, not as barren, not as discarded, but as the woman who raised a miracle. And Richard, once feared, was left broken and alone. Cruelty may steal, but truth returns stronger. Betrayal may bury you in shame, but love will resurrect you in honor.